filter in. Thank you for being with us today at our weekly virtual town hall for the University Economic Development Association. My name is Tim Hines. I'm the Executive Director of UEDA, and I'll just give you a few housekeeping items if this is your first time joining us. If you'd like to speak at any point, just like in grade school, if you'd like to speak, use the raise your hand feature that's located in the GoToMeeting. The Zoom. That'll be later on in our presentation where we have an open forum, and if you would like to speak, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature. If you have some questions for any of our presenters, that's the Q&A function. And if you'd like to chat or post any resources, that's the chat feature. So we'll get started. But first, I want to just give a brief overview about UEDA and who we are. We are the main organization that works to connect institutions to resources, to higher ed institutions to resources that promote economic engagement. We do that through news, educational programming, and of course best practices, which is what has led us to start these virtual town halls. Our members represent all of those at the nexus of higher ed economic development. So it's higher ed institutions as well as their allies that help to promote their regions and create better economies within those regions. And UEDA is the association that works to bring all that together. So we're glad you're with us today. If this is your first time engaging with UEDA, welcome. If you'd like more information, you can do so by visiting our website, universityeda.org, or you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you and talk more about our association, what we're all about, and about how we work to bring together talent, innovation, and place to build our regional economies. So thanks for being with us today. Just a quick overview of our agenda. We tend to have a best practice spotlight presentation. That 15 minutes is a very loose 15 minutes, so we'll see how our presentation goes today. We'll have some opportunity for some Q&A for our speakers. And then we have an open forum. So this is your opportunity to, again, raise your hand, ask any questions that you might have. The idea of these town halls is that we try to utilize our collective network, this network that's here with us today, to ask questions. What sorts of things are you dealing with in your regions that you'd like to ask your counterparts in other regions? What challenges do you have? And if we don't have any explicit questions, then we'll just talk about ideas about protecting human capital and jobs, supporting businesses, and fostering humanity. So that open forum towards the end of our presentation is where you all get to participate in the conversation. So we hope you'll have some questions for each other as we open it up at the end of our presentation. But first, I do want to highlight our spotlight presentation. Our speaker today is Ken Iwama. Ken is the College of Staten Island's founding vice president for the Division of Economic Development, Continuing Studies, and Government Relations. In addition to providing diverse educational programming for 4,000 pre-college, professional, certificate, and matriculated students, the division supports faculty research and innovation, government relations, corporate and foundation engagement, specialized student career services, student residential life, workforce development, auxiliary services, and community-based centers and programming. Ken's division has led the college's strategic priority in re-engaging the community of Staten Island, one of the 5 great boroughs of New York City, which has resulted in unprecedented resources flowing into the college to grow the educational and research environments needed to support and enhance academic excellence. Of particular note, Ken secured approximately $22 million for major facilities and infrastructure projects, as well as academic initiatives supporting the Division of Humanities and Social Sciences, Division of Science and Technology, School of Health Sciences, and the School of Business. And with him today also is his colleague, Jasmine Cardona. If those of you who were in attendance at our summit in Reno this past fall knows that Ken gave a presentation, probably the most interesting presentation and challenging presentation. He had 45 slides and he had 5 minutes to present one of our lightning rounds. And he did it, and it was very impressive. Some of the work that the College of Staten Island has done relative to Superstorm Sandy and its impact and being able to predict its storm flow, I think was very interesting to our audience at the summit. And knowing that College of Staten Island is at once again at a ground zero, I thought it'd be interesting to hear from Ken and his team and what's going on in New York, what their Superstorm Sandy research has done to help them prepare for this pandemic, and then what are some lessons learned, what's going on in New York, what challenges are you finding, and how is the College of Staten Island helping to be a leader as New York works to deal with the issues that they're dealing with. So with that, Ken, I'll turn it over to you and Jasmine. Thanks for being with us today.
Terrific. And I'll wait a moment for Jasmine turns on. Tim, you can see me okay?
Yep, you can see and hear you.
Okay, terrific. So welcome everyone, and thank you for participating in today's webinar and taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedules. Just give a quick shout out to, I see some of my colleagues from my new home state, Indiana, and I see some colleagues from Indiana Northwest on, so give a shout out to them. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this as well. So the purpose, as Tim spoke about, the purpose of today's presentation is to really talk about New York City, New York State, and the role that CSI is playing in this pandemic, this catastrophe, this health catastrophe that we are under here. However, I'm going to present this in a little different way today. I'm going to, for those who are story writers and storytellers, I'm going to use a convention called kind of a frame narrative, which is kind of like a story within a story. And as Tim mentioned, Superstorm Sandy really set the path for us as a regional institution in New York City and in New York State to really apply, all of the prowess that we have, academic prowess, our community engagement, to connect with our Staten Island and New York community. So I think in order to understand how we approach coronavirus in New York City, I think it's important to understand how we really first started and created the foundation for engagement through Superstorm Sandy. So I will not have the 45 slides that Tim's mentioned that I had to present in 5 minutes at the UEDA lightning round. However, so it's a very truncated version of my presentation, but I think it's necessary to give you kind of a flavor of where we come from and the leap off point to when the coronavirus first hit New York City and New York State. So what you see on the screen is really a paper presentation at 2012 Geological Society of America annual meeting and exposition. It's a paper that was written by researchers from the College of Staten Island, but also another research from University of North Carolina. And one of the researchers happens to be, in fact, the president of our college, William J. Fritz, who is one of the leaders of this team. And this conference was in November of 2012, but actually this paper was written over the summer of 2012. And you can see the title, Storm Surge Model for New York, Connecticut, Northern Waters of New Jersey, with special emphasis on Newark Harbor. And really that's what it was. It was a special emphasis on storm surges in the New York Harbor. So if you can go to the next slide. Can we move that over? Okay, I think we're froze over here. Hang on. And I see it trying to peek out.
There's a bit of a delay.
At the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is the area that the researchers were really interested in. You can see Staten Island, the borough of Staten Island. You see Brooklyn and the other boroughs to the upper right-hand corner, and New Jersey, both to the left and below. But they're interested in the shoreline of Staten Island. And as you can see, the blue areas, the Atlantic Ocean, emptying into the New York Harbor. And you can see the exposed Staten Island shoreline. So they were concerned about this area in the event of a particular hurricane during high tide running up the East Coast. So if you can go to the next slide. And hopefully this one goes a little faster than the last one. Okay, and so So this is a topographical bathymetric map of the same slide that you just witnessed. And so this is really highlights really what the researchers were concerned about. And as you can see, the dark blue on the right lower hand corner is the Atlantic Ocean, and its deep blueness indicates the depth of the Atlantic Ocean. But as you approach Staten Island, which is now outlined in black, you can see the blue starts to become light blue. And what the light blue indicates is that the water is becoming, the area underneath the water is becoming shallow as you enter the New York Harbor. And so our researchers were concerned about the fact that if we have a hurricane running up the East Coast, running right over Staten Island, with its counterclockwise motion, churning water from the Atlantic Ocean up into that ramp onto Staten Island, that we would have a potential cataclysmic event occurring. And if you could go to the next slide. And I apologize for the slowness, a little bit of delay in terms of these slides. That's technology. So so what happened? So again, our researchers had this paper completed in summer. This is October 29, 2012. And this is from the National Hurricane Center. This is the trajectory of Hurricane Sandy, which by the time it came to New York became Superstorm Sandy. And as you can see, almost every criteria that was being, that our researchers had kind of plugged into their model took place. It was a hurricane with immense strength going directly over New York City. Counterclockwise motion, feeding water from the Atlantic Ocean into New York Bay, and causing irreparable damage at that time. And again, its worst impacts came at high tide on the night of October 29. So if you can go to the next slide.
Let me know if you want me to take over the slides too. I can try to do that if it's faster on my end.
Yeah. Let's go for one more and see this speeds up at any given time, Tim. Okay. So this is a picture of from our local newspaper on the evening of October 29th at high tide, as Superstorm Sandy was coming right into Staten Island. And as you can see, this is a picture of literally people running for their lives as the tides are coming in at immense speed. Can we go to the next slide? And Tim, I'll leave that to your call if you want to take over. I'll leave it up to you if this is too slow. And so Tim, great. Okay, so this is in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, probably either next day or a couple of days over in terms of the physical toll in terms of homes, and of course in terms of lives, as you see this resident of Staten Island going through her memorabilia in the midst of this disaster. So Tim, if you go to the next page. So if you look at this map, and again, it's just showing the same area. If you look on the coast of Staten Island, each pin represents someone from a resident of Staten Island who died during the storm surge as the water's flooding. 24 deaths from Staten Island. More than half, of all New York City deaths, more than half came from Staten Island. Next slide, Tim. And so what the researchers did after this event was obviously tested their model. And as you can see from this slide, the contour lines that you're seeing here kind of represent their modeling as how far the storm surge under those circumstances that they inputted would reach inland into Staten Island. And Tim, if you go to the next slide. If you can see, this is what happened in real time. This is what really happened. the model was uncanny in terms of its prediction. And again, predicted 4 months before Superstorm Sandy hit. And of course, you know, almost every person who died in Staten Island died in those areas of storm surge. So Tim, if you could go to the next slide. And so obviously our researchers received a lot of press nationally about their research. And this is just an article from Live Science. You know, Sandy's storm surge mapped before it hit. And this is I think it was in the Daily News, I think it was in Politico, it was and both in regional and national magazines and articles. But I have to tell you, our researchers were less interested, significantly less interested in the accolades they received. And I know this because I know all of them personally. They were more interested in how this research could help in terms of Staten Island moving forward. So Tim, if you could move to the next slide. And so, you know, being part of the solution, it really was taking their research and applying it to reconstruction and sustainability of Staten Island. So this is the cover page for a report that New York Rising Community Reconstruction Program issued. It was the governor's program in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy. How do we prepare? How do we remediate and prepare for a next potential storm moving forward? So what our researchers were able to do, their prominence in terms of their research was able to get us a seat at the table and to actually participate in regional planning, which we never had before. And why I opened with Superstorm Sandy is because really this is the first time at the college that the academic research and scholarship of our institution really met the community, right? And it changed the perception both internally in the campus, but externally about the value of the College of Staten Island and the value of higher academic institutions, and really solidified our spot as a steward of place and anchor institution. So this gave us the framework for the next catastrophe. And Tim, if you could hit the next slide. So I'll let you to digest this picture. This picture is symbolic for me in so many ways. It may be symbolic nationally as well. So for anyone who is not from New York City, who visits New York City, I know you've been here. This is Times Square, right? And this is Times Square today. This is our new normal. Times Square is even, if you've been there at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, it's filled with people. There's always people in Times Square. But this is what it is today. And to put that, let's attach some numbers to that. So Tim, if we can go to the next slide. So, you know, we've been dated to death in terms of coronavirus, and I'll get into that a little bit, how we helped in terms of cycling through all the enormous amounts of data that are happening in New York City and New York State. But so I made mine very simple, just to give you a snapshot of the impact. So coronavirus cases and deaths, just all in those 3 columns. So New York State, almost 360,000 deaths, and 360,000 cases of coronavirus and 28,000 deaths confirmed and probable. For New York City, you can see how much significant of those numbers are actually found in New York City. Almost 200, I'm sure this is from yesterday. We probably exceeded 199. We're at the $200,000 mark, 200,000 mark in terms of cases, and over 20,000 deaths occurred in New York City due to coronavirus. So I picked some place just as a comparator, you know, in terms of just to give the size and scope of what we're facing. And so obviously I picked Indiana because I'll be heading to Indiana. I'm following their coronavirus cases as well too. And you can see, comparatively speaking, 29,000, 30,000 cases and 1,864 deaths. And that is not to minimize any death. One death is as significant here as anywhere in the country, but it gives you the size and scope as a tragedy. And of course, you can really dive down into this data and do, you know, how many per 100,000 residents to get a better picture. But I just wanted to show you the scope of what we're dealing with. Tim, the next slide. And a very abbreviated coronavirus timeline I'm going to give you next. So many things, hundreds of events happened between March 1st and May 4th, but I just want to pop these out for you, just you know, to show the quick moving pace of things. So our first confirmed case in New York was on March 1st. So from March 1st to today, 360,000 cases, right? So March 1st was case number 1. March 14th was the first coronavirus related death. March 19th in New York. And March 19th, CUNY commences mandated remote learning. So I'm not just talking about CUNY, actually. That was our Department of Education. That was SUNY. That was all higher education institutions. This was about the time that they were given the, you cannot have students on campus anymore. And very next day, the Governor Cuomo issued his New York on pause executive order. Basically, that's the stay-at-home order that governors around the country have issued. We just called it New York on pause, shutting down businesses and non-essential businesses. And on May 4th, and this just happened, so this is very interesting. May 4th, the governor announced a 4-phase, 7-benchmark reopening process. So, you know, the economics of, you know, we've been so focused on the health aspect of it and that tragedy. All of a sudden now the economic piece is starting to rear its head as being maybe not as equal concern, but of significant concern. So the governor has issued a 4-phase, 7-benchmark reopening process. And Tim, if you can go to the next slide. So this is the New York State dashboard for tracking the 4 phases as well as the metrics to meet those 4 phases. So the governor's office decided to, and the state decided to view reopening in terms of regions, okay? Not in terms of cities, but in terms of regions. And in New York, we have 10 regions, okay? And so the 4 phases of reopening, the first phase is construction, manufacturing, wholesale, supply chain, and some retails for curbside pickup, in-store pickup or drop-off. Phase 2, if you pass phase 1, then we're going to open storefront retailers and businesses in the professional services, finance, and insurance, and real estate industries. Okay. Phase 3, after we pass phase 2 and everything's okay, it's restaurants and other food service business reopen for dine-in services. And phase 4, of particular interest to me, is the schools, the arts, entertainment, recreation, business. So we're lumped in phase 4. So CUNY is on that last, CUNY and SUNY is in that last phase. So we're going to open a last in terms of regional reopening. Now, to get to phase 1, you have to meet 7 regional benchmarks. And these cover the gamut, and you can see them on the lower part of the screen, the columns, and they, you know, decline in net hospitalizations, decline in hospital deaths, you know, number of beds, IC units, diagnostic testing. So all of these benchmark metrics are set forth. You have to hit 7 of 7. And if you hit 7 of 7, you can open up at phase 1, okay? Now, if you look what our concern is, you know, already 7 regions have hit 7 of 7 and are in phase 1 reopening. 3 of them are not. But if you look at the metrics for New York City, only Long Island is as bad as we are. We only hit 4 of the 7. So in terms of the dire straits that New York City sees itself in, we're lagging behind the rest of the state, obviously because the concentration of residents in New York City. So what does this mean for New York State, New York City? If you can go to the next slide, Tim. So I'm not giving you any data for this. And the reason why I'm not giving you any data or any charts regarding the economic impact is because it's changing. It's changing every day. I was preparing for this on, I think, Monday. Something changed on Tuesday. It changes on Wednesday because the economic picture is not getting better. It gets worse every day. So I'm just giving you some talking points about where we are. So unemployment, 1.9 million filed for unemployment insurance claims so far during the period of mid-March through May 7th. Okay, that's 20% of our, more than 20% of our 9.4 million workforce in New York. That's an incredible number, 21%. In the city, right, of that 1.9 million, city makes up 930, almost half of the filings came from New York City. Okay, so they're at 22% unemployment right now as well too. Our New York City controller has estimated that the city will lose 900,000 jobs by June. The New York City Independent Budget Office just released a report that that in terms of permanent jobs, Scott Stringer, the controller, was just talking about maybe temporary loss, where you're going to, as phase 1 and phase 2 and open, that those jobs will be there again. The Independent Budget Office in New York City said that in terms of permanent loss of jobs, by June, it's going to be about 388,000. By September, 404, almost 500,000 jobs gone. In terms of state revenues, just on Friday, the state controller announced that just last month, you know, our state tax revenue came in at 3.7 billion, where it was 11.6 billion last year. So that's the difference in tax revenue, that with the shutdown of all our businesses. That's 1 month. That's 1 month. So overall, we're looking at a $13 billion deficit in New York State this year. It's going to get worse. And on the city side, the Independent Budget Office has anticipated a $9.5 billion tax shortfall this fiscal year next. The IBO also projects a $500,000 budget gap this fiscal year, an $830 million budget gap in the city in 2021, and it scales up to $6 billion in 2022. So this is the framework that we're dealing economically with this crisis. Now, the HEROES Act, it's out there. I don't think it's going to pass in its current form. It is allocated in its House-passed bill, $67 billion to New York State, with some going to the state, some going to the city, some to go. Again, everybody's very skeptical about how far and if it's going to be that much. So we can't count on that relief right now. So that's the framework of the economic in light of the health crisis. So let's talk about a little bit about the College of Staten Island, what it's doing. And Tim, if you go to the next slide. So again, built upon the framework that we established in Superstorm Sandy, we knew that we had multiple needs to fill as a regional as well as a borough force in New York City and on Staten Island. So Tim, if you go to the next slide. One of the great opportunities I've had in working in the College of Staten Island because of our economic development efforts, I was asked to sit on the state board of the New York State Small Business Development Center, and that gives me a seat on the advisory board of actually developing procedures and policy about how the SBA distributes money to the state and how the state distributes money to small and medium-sized businesses. So I asked for a snapshot of how much activity has increased in New York State from March to May 7th, 2019 versus 2020. And as you can see, the number of even clients counseled, 50% spike. They never did webinars, so there's an 18,000% spike there. But total business assisted, 79% increase. In a sense, they're overwhelmed right now with requests, of desperate people trying to save their businesses from bankruptcy. And client capital, even from March, May, and all the economic numbers aren't in, all of the programs under the CARES Act, including the Paycheck Protection Act, all the different types of loans available for SBA. So already there's been an 80% jump in terms of the amount of capital that's been generated to small and medium-sized businesses in New York State. Now, I asked my Small Business Development Center here on Staten Island to kind of gauge their metrics with the statewide level, and they either meet or exceed those state averages just on Staten Island. So this is the critical piece that we're helping our businesses stay afloat during this crisis. Tim, if you go next slide. Another thing that we're doing, and I'm sure many of the institutions represented here today are also doing as well too, is really re-educating ourselves about our mission. So we are the only public institution on Staten Island. We are an access, affordability institution that stresses academic excellence. Okay, that is our role, our place on Staten Island as the only public institution. And so the president recently issued this op-ed to our local newspaper, talking about the concerns that parents have in sending their children away to universities and colleges out of state. And so we're hearing it from parents, we're hearing it from students, both on a health-related reasons, but also financial considerations. There are parents who have come to us and said, I don't know if I want to send my child to another state and residential living with health concerns, but also to maybe just engage in online learning, or in fact, they may not even leave the Staten Island and have to pay out-of-state tuition to actually study at home on Staten Island. So the president had actually issued this op-ed telling that don't forget about the College of Staten Island. Our mission is here. We're here to serve you. If you don't want to go away, come to the College of Staten Island. If you want to delay, don't delay a gap year. Go to college. Don't delay your outcomes and your degree attainment. And those who are changing careers, we're here for you as the hourly workers are displaced due to businesses closing. you can change your career here at the College of Staten Island as well too. So, you can view this as, as a way of also, driving enrollment, which everybody needs to do as well too across the country. But it's really not about that. It's really about serving your role as an anchor institution, public anchor institution, and reminding people that we're here, we're affordable, accessible, and we can provide great quality instruction and education and scholarship and research as well too, and as well as performing arts. So Tim, if you could go to the next one. On a micro level, our workforce development area has been honing in on a subset of catastrophe happening in New York City and New York State, which is the extended care facilities. The percentage of death in extended care in nursing homes and other type of homes is astronomical. Astronomical, the percentage of deaths coming from these homes and these facilities. So what we've been doing is working with our 1199, which is the largest healthcare union both in New York City and nationally, as well as our Staten Island Performing Provider System, which is an organization that's federally funded that was charged with Medicaid redesign, but they also give us funding for programs to help the medical community. So we're starting the first program in the state for certified nursing assistants to work in nursing and extended care facilities in a safe way as possible to fill the need of the dwindling workforce in these particular areas. So it would be the first apprentice program in New York State that we're working together on. So in addition to the overall college mission, in terms of workforce development specifically geared to the health sector, we're trying to do our part as well too. So Tim, if you can go to the next slide. And this is, and I had shared this with some of my colleagues in Indiana already. This is one of the things that are more aligned with what we did in Superstorm Sandy. And I have a faculty member, a great faculty member that works in our division that is a GIS, Geographic Information Specialist expert. And so this is the types of projects that we engage in routinely when data is needed. So what she does is take complicated data from around the city and state and make it much more accessible to the average resident who doesn't deal with data every day and doesn't know how to aggregate and disaggregate data. And so we created this dashboard using data from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and using a platform by the Environmental Systems Research Institute, which is ESRI, to present this data, and we can do it. A lot of this data can be done at hyper-local level down to the zip code. And until we did this, no one else in the city was presenting this type of hyper-localized data. And so we disseminated it to all the pre-K through 12 institutions on Staten Island, all the community-based organizations, as well as all our elected officials, and they have been disseminated as well too, to get a one source where they can really understand what's happening and what the trends are with the coronavirus. And what we'll be doing moving forward is we're going to be expanding this dashboard to expand potentially into race, ethnicity data, as well as socioeconomic data to see how it's impacted that. And then we're also thinking about doing some type of business dashboard as well too, in terms of impact of small businesses across the 5 boroughs. So this is something that's been very well received and is aligned with taking our faculty expertise and really meeting the community to help the community in times of catastrophe. So and let me just end with this. We're also doing multiple humanitarian efforts at the college. And some of it's bigger and beyond my division. As the only public institution of higher education on Staten Island, if we have an uptick in coronavirus cases, we will be the place where, if they have overflow in hospitals, we will be a center where we're going to be placing those that are suffering from this epidemic. So we've already worked with the governor's office, and we're a designated medical emergency facility. In addition to that, even the small things like, I oversee auxiliary services. We have food that has only a shelf life for so long. So we're distributing it to the community. And so instead of throwing this food out, we're inviting community-based organizations that help those who are in food deserts or who need food to release that to community as well too. So we're trying to, again, fulfill our role as an anchor institution, borough stewardship and fully integrated in all areas within Staten Island in New York City. So with that, Tim, I'm done. So thank you everyone, and thank you for the patience for the slow slides at the beginning. But I thank everyone for being here today.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jasmine, too. And I for those that aren't aware of Ken's reassignment, I guess, or
Yeah.
Well, Ken has been selected as the Chancellor for Indiana University Northwest to take his role there August 1st, right?
August 1st. August 1st.
Congratulations.
Looking forward to it.
On behalf of all of us in the UEDA community, I really, just getting to know you over the past few years, you and Jasmine and all the CSI, it's well deserved. So congratulations there.
Well, Tim, if I could just add one thing to that, one of the reasons that attracted me, and this is for everyone here that's at UEDA, I first was exposed to Indiana University actually at UEDA, and so if I could give a push to the organization, UEDA is a place where you see this synergy of people who think the same way about how we view our academic institutions and roles of community, and also, I know Indiana and Indiana University Northwest specifically, they have such a strong community ties and are just looking to expand them, frankly. So everything came together in terms of my search for Indiana University Northwest, but it has some ties to UEDA. And I've met so many people at IUN, and they're fantastic people. I'm looking forward to being there. So thank you, Tim.
And you've created a strong team at CSI that I think will really continue to strengthen beyond your departure. So congrats. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Tim.
I know that some of your folks are saying that they're very proud to welcome you to IUN. So congratulations there. So in the face of the impending funding reduction, will the breadth of programs that CSI is going to be reduced?
Well, it's funny that you say that, right? Across the board in CUNY, program funding will be reduced without a doubt, because we're senior colleges in the Senior University of New York are predominantly funded by the state, and the community colleges are predominantly funded by the city. So none of them have money. So both they've already announced potential preparation for massive cuts, both in the senior colleges and the community college level. This is our new normal based upon the economic data, impact data that I gave to you. It's frankly inescapable. In terms of my division, however, and this is how we created and built it under our president's vision, and basically he allowed us, the great people in our division, just to run with it, is that we're in some ways very largely self-supported. So we've been successful in getting a lot of grants, both federal, state, citywide, foundation-wide, to advance a lot of our economic development initiatives and actually supplement academic affairs, which has been a big key for our sustainability at the College of Staten Island, and our view and the value judgments that the faculty view our particular division. So many of the projects that we're involved with, and we're involved in the major P-Tech initiative, which is creating a tech school combined with our faculty as well as high school faculty to give students 6 year after 6 years both an associate's degree as well as a high school degree. That's a major initiative that's moving forward. We have multiple measures with multiple programs with the mayor's office in terms of millions of dollars in funding to upgrade our preparation for computer science students, as well as advancing our incubator, our tech incubator as well too. So a lot of our funding comes from these external sources, which are somewhat protected because there's such high level things that if on the big scheme of things, they may cut CUNY and they may cut CSI funding, but they won't potentially cut these mayoral initiatives. So we just happen to be at the right place at the right time. Now we're going to suffer. And the thing that the college is going to suffer is that much of our revenue ultimately finds its way to other parts of the college, and that's going to dry up this year. And so we can't be that safety net for the college in terms of when the operational tax levy monies and they need it for faculty travel, or they need it for adjunct hiring, or they need it for program development, it may not be this year. So I'm trying to look at things with a glass half full. And so in our division, we're going to be able to continue with some of our, with many of our initiatives. But, it was the way we were constructed, which is that the college really had no appetite to fund us significantly. So when we were built in 2016, that was our mission, is to become self-sustaining, but even beyond that, contribute to the rest of the college so that we could be sustained forever.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks that are engaged with UEDA are in the same boat, where they're in divisions that are forced to have revenues that may be somewhat separate than admissions reliant income. So what do you feel is the appropriate mix for that, to maintain a model of sustainability for institutions relative to external funding, admissions funding, and
that's a good question. I think for our division, maybe at the most, maybe 25%, probably less than that, maybe 15% funded through tax levy resources, so state and city funding that normally comes that support all the other parts of the college and the division. The rest is self-supported through our own grants, and that we have successfully developed over the years. It's a good model for us right now, because when everybody's looking to cut right now. I mean, that is, unfortunately, it's about attrition right now. I keep advancing the notion of innovation and attrition, because you can't just cut your way out of these things. You have to think about new ways and new modalities to move forward. So, it works for us in terms of that we have enough support that helps us, but in the big scheme of things, when the college is looking for cuts, it's not going to be from, most likely, it will not be for our division. But that second part of also not just keeping revenue for yourself, but also supporting the college mission by supporting academic affairs, by supporting student affairs, by supporting budget and finance and facilities. Those types of things actually lend even more to sustainability, because now it's not just you saying, please don't cut my area. It's everybody saying, please don't cut that area. And when you have that resounding, mass of people saying this is not a good thing to do to the college, that's when you kind of know that you've kind of changed the conversation, And I hope we've done that a little bit at the College of Staten Island, but have much more to do. And certainly I look forward to continue the great work at IUN moving forward as well, too.
So how does New York work to ensure something like this doesn't happen again? How can you be more prepared? You used Superstorm data to help predict and change, hurricane evacuation routes and so forth. So, and maybe you haven't had a chance to totally think about it because you're still trying to, just deal with the present, but any thoughts on that, and maybe what CSI's role is in that?
I think, I was actually impressed by the governor's 4-phase 7 benchmark plan. I think everybody's waiting for some direction when, in many ways, as we experienced in all our college universities, when people ask us for direction, many of us don't have really a lot of answers to give. The universities that are operating probably the best have more answers to give. But so I have a little bit of sympathy for when I ask for questions from our government representatives and they don't have them. I have a little sympathy for that, because we're under the same constraints here at the College of Staten Island. However, as the pressure built to have some type of reopening plan, and I think this model, the 4-phase 7 benchmark plan, is reminiscent, and it refers to some other plans that are happening around the country. So those who see the slide that I showed up, probably say, well, that looks similar to my state as well too. But at least gives a framework about where we stand in line in terms of reopening. And as it gets implemented, we'll get a better idea about timing as well too. But frankly, that's all we have in New York State right now. There's probably 1,000 committees assembled on every level in New York State government, down to the city level, trying to figure this out. And those will commiserate with me on the phone. I had a had a conversation yesterday with our CUNY leadership about our residence halls, right? Our residence halls are public-private partnership. And that falls under me, the operational side of the residence halls. And we have, these are bonded projects that have mortgages due on them. So if we do not have students here in fall, what does that do for the infrastructure? Are we defaulting on loans? Is money going to have to come from the CARES Act? Is money going to have to be diverted from other parts of the cost? So, and frankly, when people ask us, what are you doing? And our answer right now is we don't know, because I think some universities may have the plan already in terms of what modality and what type of learning they're doing. CUNY hasn't announced it yet because there's so many things firing now on the New York State and city level. They just haven't been able to give that directive yet as to what we're looking like. So right now, more so than probably anywhere in the country, we are in a state of what do we do next? And I think the luxury, and I say that it's really not a luxury. There's no luxuries during this time period. But the other states who don't have the highest as high incidences, I think they can breathe a little bit better, and they can sit back and say, we have time, we can think this out. In New York State and New York City, it's nothing like that. It is everything is on fire at the same time, and everybody's really relying on the leadership on the state and city level and also within CUNY to move us out of this phase. So we're all trying to do our best, and we're all trying to contribute as much as we can to helping the state and city get to the next level of reopening. But to say the least, it's tough. And these are all my time and all my days are spent at the college developing these types of plans and self-sustainability moving forward.
So switching to your other role, Lake County, and particularly Gary, has been a hotspot for COVID cases as well. What do you see that the School of Business, particularly at IUN, Business and Economics, can do to prepare for alleviating the huge damage done by the pandemic, given the budget challenges that are already facing that region?
Well, I could put her on the spot because I think the dean the school's actually, but I won't do that to her because I respect her and I want to keep a good starting relationship with her as well too. So, but I'm sure she could actually answer the question much better than I can. I can only tell you from my area what may be translatable to IUN. And in my meetings at Indiana University Northwest, what I've been careful to say and careful to do is not to say, I have the answers because I'm coming from New York City, so this will work here at Indiana University Northwest. I'm doing this for a long time. I understand that that whatever you plan and how things change and how things, in the business sector or whether it's coronavirus response, it has to be organic and unique to that particular area. So the one things I promised the faculty, staff, and students, as well as the community, when I come to Indiana University Northwest, I have things that have worked here in the Northeast. I have things that have worked here in New Jersey and New York. Some will be easily transferable and say, well, this is a great idea and may be welcome. Other things won't be organic. Gary has a different economy. Northwest region of India has a different economy, right? Different sectors that drive the economy in the Northwest region. However, one of the things that attracted me, among other things at IUN, we are so close to Chicago, right? Almost like Staten Island is close to, right, the Manhattan financial districts. We're right in the shadow of financial districts. So that those synergies and those connections are just there. Meanwhile, you have a city like Gary who's trying to move forward, much like Staten Island is trying to move forward. In a borough that has an eclectic, diverse population of different wants and needs, similar to New York City. So there are parallels to be drawn from where I'm going and from whence I came. But at the same time, my job is to meet with community leaders, meet with the business leaders, meet with the faculty, meet with the researchers and the academics that are engaged in high level scholarship and research, and also in performing creative arts, and to figure out what that connection and how we can do similar growth and support, but in a way that's unique to Northwest Indiana.
Yeah, and I think that sharing of ideas, that's kind of what UEDA brings to the table, and that's what we're all about. So, I think that taking ideas that might work in one area and putting them in another region is really what we try to focus on. So, to the extent where we can help you or our network can help you, I know that we're here for you.
Absolutely.
I want to have a little bit of time just for our open forum, and I know that Ken, you talked a little bit about sort of how the op-ed that your president ran, which I thought was very interesting. I thought that maybe we can open it up to the group, and if there's any ways that your institutions are helping to craft similar messages, and think of it as media relations. How is that working, and has anyone done anything within their regions that's been kind of unique or interesting that they'd like to share? If so, again, there's the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and I'd love to bring someone on to discuss a little bit about what their institution's doing relative to media relations and managing the purpose of institutions during this time. Maybe while we see if anyone pops in that's willing to share something that's going on in their region. Ken, maybe you can talk about maybe is there a catalyst behind that message that the president created? What sort of prompted that?
Well, I have to tell you, I saw actually an article, a similar article, not quite the same, but written by a chancellor from Rutgers University. Because I work in an epicenter, but I live in New Jersey, which is the second biggest epicenter of coronavirus. I can't escape it. I saw what they were trying to do, right? And again, a cynic can be said a little bit, okay, this is really just enrollment-based, plea to in a desperate time where enrollments may be decreasing. But I'm a little bit less cynical about that. I think, and certainly I know what the president was thinking when it really was a public service announcement, right? Because we heard anecdotally, even in my own staff, someone who wanted to go to their grandchild wanted to go to a institution, a four-year institution in New England. And they decided we're not doing it. The parents wouldn't let their child go, frankly. And so what is left for that student? What is left for that student? So it's incumbent upon us, again, as at our mission as an access institution, to not just sit back and say, well, if you find us, you find us. It's our incumbent upon us to engage in outreach and to say, here's our mission, just to remind everyone, and here's how we are here for you. It gives an option for parents. And I think, again, anecdotally, I haven't looked at the enrollment numbers specifically, although our enrollment actually increased shortly thereafter out of this op-ed. But again, I can't draw any conclusions at this point until I see the data. But it was a good thing to do, and it was a reassuring thing to do, and it wasn't necessarily about dollars and cents. So that was the origination of it.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, to have that mindset behind it. And you bring up a good point too. I know all the institutions that are on the line today are dealing with prepping for fall courses, and some are online, some might be a hybrid, some might be in person. But and I'm posing this to the entire audience as well as you can. But is there anything that anyone is doing to prepare for fall courses that might be unique or different, or something that can be an idea that can take folks that folks can take and use elsewhere? I'm going to actually pull in Margot Fliss, who has asked to speak and have her give a take on what we're talking about. So Margot?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And Ken, wonderful presentation.
Thanks, Margot.
So one thing that I'm up in Alaska, and at the University of Alaska Anchorage, we have a very non-traditional student population, meaning we have a lot of people who come back, later in their careers after they've had children. And so one thing they've started doing in the last just week or so that I've been really impressed by was running a lot of ads. They have a little bit of money that they've put together. I'm not sure. I think it's some local foundations, and I don't think it's a ton of money, but essentially encouraging those who, maybe had 12 credits left to finish their degree, but had to take time off for, a multitude of reasons. Yeah. For non-traditional students, they said, why don't you come back? They're online now. You can do them in your own pace over the fall semester or spring semester. And I was actually really excited about that. I've had a lot of people I know be like, wow, that's a great idea. I could never juggle going to in-person classes with, kids and a job, but
Yeah.
doing it online in the evenings would be fantastic. And I might get a degree in the next year. So just tapping a different market, I think, where online classes might work really well for them. So I've been pretty impressed by that, and I'm excited to see what kind of a turnout they get from that.
Well, Margaret, that's a great point. I'll tell you from the College of Staten Island's perspective. Our transition to online learning has been a struggle for us for a multitude of reasons. And so we went from less than 10% of our sections being online or hybrid to 100% in about a 1 or 2 week time period. So talk about a disruptor. But so instead of easing ourselves into it, we were shot out of a cannon into a new modality of learning and teaching. And so what I think ultimately will help us, Margot, is that the things, the cohorts that we couldn't capture before, right? Just as you're talking about, the adult learning student, the student that may want to do an online executive program, those who, for whatever reason, their home situation can't do in-person learning. This will be one of the benefits of the shock that we're undergoing right now, and I think it will enable us to outreach to a whole new, different type of student. Now, we attract adult learners already and first generation students as well too, but I think going now, being a practiced online institution is going to give us much more flexibility in doing that moving forward.
Thanks for that. Yeah, and I want to kind of wrap up. I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask Ken in his incoming role as Chancellor to give a message to students that might be graduating this year and going into a very challenging workforce environment. What's your message to them?
Keep your chin up and use your resources. Use your connections. One of the things of being largely a first generation access institution, the College of Staten Island, we've learned over the years that many of our students, while they're as brilliant as any student, including Ivy Leagues across the country, they just choose to come to the Staten Island for whatever reason. The one obstacle they face is, these things called soft skills, which aren't soft skills at all, right? It's the networking, it's the outreach to support themselves, right? To fend for themselves in these types of environments, right? And so one of the things we're doing at the college through our career services, but also through academic programming, is scaling up these skills so that they can compete with any students across the country. So I think the message to them is to really not to be shy and to be aggressive of accessing all the supports that all our great universities and colleges have, whether it's for career services, whether it's a faculty member that they love, whether it's somebody in student affairs, whether it's our division. Access them now more than ever, because the difference between getting a job, right, and moving along socioeconomic mobility-wise, a lot of that is really just determined by your ability to maneuver the system, right? And so that's what I encourage our students to do.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Thank you both for being here today, sharing what you're doing. It's amazing work.
And thanks to my staff, Jasmine and Intisar, who are online, and they did a great job in helping me also in preparing talking this out and preparing the slides for this as well too. So I want to give them a shout out as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And our hope is that, not only wishing you luck in Indiana, but also as you work to transition, but also all the best for New York, and praying for you guys and all the good work that you're doing. And I really hope that out of this we all become stronger, but particularly New York needs that support right now, and we're behind you. So thanks for sharing your story today, and
Thanks, Tim.
And all the best, and stay safe.
And thank you, everyone, and stay safe to everyone on the call today. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.